Hi, my name is Bill Stone. I've been doing leaded glass since the 1970s. Made all kinds of projects from large windows for homes down to all kinds of hobby things such as solar lights, sun catchers, night lights, all kinds of interesting things with leaded glass. So today we're going to talk about a sun catcher. It's this one right here that we put together. We've got a description how to make this one in the video. It goes from the very beginning all the way to the end to get to this project right here. And so I hope you enjoy the video, and I hope you'll give it a try. I'm going to go over just real quickly some of the tools that you need to get started on. These are pretty much the basic ones. Of course, you can add a lot of things to these that as you go along. But first of all, you're going to need a glass cutter. I would recommend try to buy a fairly decent one. This one here is a Studio Pro. It's oil fed. Has a cutter tip right here in the middle of it. You can see a couple supports on each side of it. And we'll talk about this later on. When you cut your glass, this actually adds to the width of it, unless you put the cutting wheel right on the mark that you're working on. So that plays a part in our project. Lead shears. These are used to cut the lead to the length we want. We have this little tool here. This is used to spread the cane. Sometimes when you have glass that's wavy or it's thick, you need to spread the cane. For instance, this is a piece of H cane. You put it in the track here and just push it through, which pushes out the sides, which makes the channel a little bit larger. These are running pliers. The running pliers are basically for snapping the glass. After you score it with your cutter, you can put this mark right here, right on the score line, and just press it down, and it'll take and snap your glass for you. We have an assortment of tools or rulers here, all kinds of different ones. This one here actually is a piece of aluminum angle that I got at the hardware store. It's a 1/2 inch across the back side here, 3/4 on this side. So if you're cutting a lot of straight pieces to those dimensions, this works quite well. You need a little machine square sometimes. It doesn't have to be this big. There's make some that are much smaller than this, or it could be a plastic square also. Going to need a little stainless steel brush. Looks like this. Use this for brushing the lead joints after we get ready, so we can get ready to solder it. Going to need some solder. This solder here comes in 1 pound rolls. This is a 60/40. I like that. It flows real well, and it melts at a fairly low temperature, so that works very well. Going to need some flux. I like this one. It's water soluble. It doesn't smoke, doesn't make a big mess, and it washes up really easy with water, so I like that a lot. Then we're going to need a soldering iron. This one here, I like this one. This is called a Waller 100 watt. It uses a tip that determines the temperature. This tip that's on here right now is 700 degrees, which is perfect for soldering our lead cane. The lead cane melts probably about at 730, maybe 750 degrees. Solder melts right around 700 degrees. So you don't have a chance of it burning a hole through your lead if using a tip like this. There's lots of soldering irons on the market. If you have one that doesn't have a tip that controls the temperature, normally they're hooked up to a rheostat, which changes the voltage, which changes the temperature on them. And those you can use just as well. And then last but not least, I've got a little vise here. This vise here is really for a drill press, but I use it for a third hand, so I need to hold some things. You'll see later on in the video where we're going to use this. And last but not least, I have a small emery board here, which acts like a file. It's about 100 grit, 100 grit on one side, 180 on the other side. This works nice for kind of chamfering the edges of our project so they don't have real sharp edges on them. So we'll pull away here real quick, and I'm going to show you one other tool that's really nice to have, but it's not important to do this project. But later on down the line, if you get to where you feel like you want to get involved more, you're going to need a glass grinder. So let's move over and we'll take a look at it. So this is our glass grinder here. This one here is made by Glass Star, and I've had this one fried for 25 years. It works really well. They last a long, long time. The way it works, let's see if I can move in here real close. You have a drum right here, which has industrial diamonds on it, which is used to cut the glass. Behind it, you have a sponge, and underneath here, you have a water dam, which holds water. The sponge sucks it up and keeps this moist as you're grinding. So this works really, really nice. This has a eye shield on it. If you find a grinder somewhere, maybe secondhand, or somebody gives you one that doesn't have an eye shield on it, be sure to use some safety glasses when you're grinding, because little shards of glass can fly up, and you don't want to get one of those in your eye, because it'd be very painful and could cause some serious damage. All right, so that's basically the tools we're going to need for this project. And like I say, this one here, nice to have. There's ways to get around not having to have one. So we'll talk about that a little bit as we start to put this project together. All righty. Well, it's time to start and stretch some cane. The purpose of doing this is it strengthens the cane and also hardens it just a little bit. So anyway, this is the cane right here. This is our H cane. This is the cane that goes in between the glass. We're going to put it in this little vise right here. This is a cane vise or a lead vise. It's just hooked to the table right here. You just tap on it a little bit here. Go down to the end of your lead. These lead strips come to you in 6-foot lengths. You just take a pair of pliers, you grab them, and you give a couple good pulls, and that's all that's required. When you do that, keep an eye on it though, because some of these lead cane have a seam in them, and when the seam is where it's made in the factory, sometimes it will break right there, so you want to be sure you got yourself braced a little bit. The other cane that we're going to use is a U cane. That's this one right here. I'm going to put it in with the soft edges up, because it can bite into the vise a little bit better. Tap it down and come down to the end here, and we'll just give it a couple tugs. It pulls a little bit harder and doesn't stretch near as far. Give it a couple tugs, and that's it. So that's all there is to doing that. If you don't want to invest in a lead vise, you can use a vise that's on your work table, or if you don't have one of those, if you have a C-clamp, you can use a C-clamp, just clamp it to the edge of the table, and you can use that just as well. So we'll move on to the next project. All right, in the last little video there, we talked about tools and how to use, somewhat how to use them. So now let's put them to use. So we need to cut some glass for this project, and rather than start out with your good glass, which can be expensive, anywhere from $10 to $12, $15 a square foot, let's start with some clear panes of glass. The ones I'm going to use today actually came out of some old picture frames that somebody threw away and I rescued on the side of the street. So anyway, we're going to use a combination of rulers. We talked about these rulers. So we got a whole bunch of them here. We've got one that's kind of a combo. It's not really a ruler, but I made it into a ruler. It's 3/4 across the back side, a 1/2 inch across the front. So we're going to use all of these. And we have a mechanical square here. We talked about that a little bit. We'll probably use that right at the end when we get ready to make our final cuts. So what we're going to do, for instance, I'm going to take a piece of clear plate glass. This is off of a picture frame. And so you can get used to cutting glass. You put it up against the backstop. Since this class is primarily for a beginner or somebody who is just starting out, it's a good idea to practice on something that's not expensive, and if you mess it up, you don't worry about it too much. So here again is for beginners, so we're using just nothing but straight cut glass, no curves, nothing real difficult. So for instance, if we need some 1-inch pieces, we're going to take our 1-inch ruler. You set it right up against the backstop. You take your glass cutter here. Now keep in mind, we talked about this a little bit before. If you remember, on the glass cutter, the cutting wheel is right in the middle here. So this adds some room to it. So since this project doesn't really have any specification where it's going to go, this doesn't become a problem here. So if the pattern calls for a 1-inch strip of glass and you cut it with the glass cutter, it's really going to be about 1 1/16 of an inch wide. So in our case, we don't care, because we're not worried about what the end size is, because it's just going to hang, and it doesn't have to fit into something. So keep that in mind. So you take your glass cutter, push it in here, put it right up against the edge. Hold your glass cutter up straight. You don't have to push hard. You take and you score it. You take your glass here. You can put your hands on both sides of it and just give it a little pressure and it'll break. If you're concerned about doing that, if you're brand new and you go, oh man, I don't want to cut myself, then you use the running pliers that we talked about. So you take it again, put it in here, take and go ahead and score this again. Here again, you don't have to push really hard. And you take your running pliers. So we'll get up here real close so hopefully you can see this. There's a little score line there, right at the 1 inch mark here. And you just apply just a little bit of pressure there and it takes and cuts it for you. So we're going to need some 1 inch pieces. We're going to need some 1/2 inch pieces. So this is the 1/2 inch piece right here. Because this has a nice back to it here, I always like to hold this up here against here like this. And use that back kind of as a guide for my cutter. Just hold it. Here again, make a nice smooth cut. This one here you can snap by hand too. Or, like I say, if you're concerned, and it's not a bad idea. Some people, and myself, sometimes I use the running pliers all the time for everything. So it's just a matter, just another step you have to take. You have to hold the glass, and then you have to get your running pliers, and you have to put it on here and you cut it. But it's not really a huge problem. So you're going to cut it like that. So after you cut a few pieces of glass, you're going to get a feel for it. And if you have a combination cut where you're going to make a big cut, say for instance, our panel needs a piece of glass that's going to be 2.5 inches. So we could take a combination of this. We'll take this, which we know is 1/2 inch. So we can put that in there. This is an old metal ruler, which happens to be 1 inch wide. We'll stick that in there. And we'll put there too. So this gives me 2 inches plus a 1/2 inch, plus whatever the cutter is going to add to it. So we can just go ahead and stick this in there. Light score. Move all your rulers away. You can take your glass out. Here again, just put your fingers on each side of it and put your fingers underneath it and just give it a little pressure. And there you go. You got it cut. So now our good glass. And here again, this is why we wanted to kind of practice on our old glass. I've marked it here. This is a grain that's going up and down. And if we decide we want to make this grain go all the way, same way on our project, we're going to cut this, for instance, we're going to cut a strip out of here of 1 inch. Now, this glass, you want to cut it on the smooth side. In this case, we've got a rough side and then a rougher side. So you want to pick the lesser of two evils. So this is the least rough. So we're going to set it right in here. We need a 1 inch strip. So we're going to take our 1 inch ruler and we'll put it up against the edge. Here again, you don't need a lot of pressure. You want to score it. We'll use our running pliers. Hopefully you can see the score right here. It's right here. Just put your running pliers on here. Just give it a little bit of pressure. And there's our piece right there. If we needed to cut all different sizes, we could go from there. In this case, we're going to need 4 1 inch by 1 inch squares. So since we have our 1 inch piece right here, let's use this one here. We got a couple here. We're going to take and we're going to set this in here like this. Hold it in straight. Put our square up here. We'll take and we'll cut our 1 by 1. We can just take our fingers here and take and snap it. So we're going to need 4 of these, 1 for each corner. So we're going to go ahead and do that. As you watch YouTube videos, you'll see people cutting glass all kinds of different ways. I would say practice with it, find out what you like to do, what works best for you, and just kind of go with that and then refine that as you spend more time with it. Here again, running pliers. Just put it up here like this. Snap it. And we'll cut one more here. I kind of like this color on the end here. So now the color on the end there, just if you put a square on here, this doesn't appear to me to be exactly square. So I can put a square on here If you look really close right here at the edge here, you can see that that's not square. So I can use my square here, just lay it in here like this, come back about maybe a 1/4 inch, take a cut on it, and take your running pliers here again, up here, snap it off. That gives you a nice straight edge. And we can get our 4th one cut out of here. Be sure to always tap it against your backstop so that you don't have some funny looking cut come out on it. Here again, we'll just take our running pliers, we'll stick it in here, right on the line, and we'll get our snap. So there's our 4 corner pieces. This will be the side that we're going to use up. This is the rougher side. So we're going to build it with the rougher sides up. So anyway, that gives you just a little bit of idea how to cut glass. And like I say, just get some plain window glass, or if you've got some old picture frames around that you're going to throw away, hang on to the glass out of them and practice on that before you get into cutting your good glass and make a mistake, and then you've wasted money, and all of a sudden your project gets more expensive. All right, we're going to get ready to put this together, so we'll be back on the next video. Hi, we're back. We're going to make a sun catcher today. It's another easy project for beginners. It's going to go along with the series that we just did on the how to make a solar lantern for beginners. This one here is primarily going to be cut with all straight glass. You see the pattern's already been drawn out. We're going to have a strip that's 1 inch, one is 2.5 inches, a 1/2 inch strip, and in the middle we're going to have a 2-inch square. And when we get ready to build this, we'll set up and we'll make a form out here on the outside edge to start down here in the lower left-hand corner to build this. But just to give you a little layout how this is going to go together, our first piece is going to be a 2x2 bevel with a glue chip top on it. That's going to go right in here. Then I've already cut some 1/2 inch. This is a nice pink variegated glass. It's going to go, they'll go around there. We'll cut the right length for it. Then the next piece is going to go be a blue with some more glue chip, which will match the center on our bevel. So that'll be set in here. And then around the outside border here, we're going to do a couple different colors. One, we're going to do the darker pink for the inside pieces right here, for the here, and here. And then right on the corners here, we're going to do a lighter colored one. It looks like this one. So they'll go out here on the corners. So we'll cut some 1x1s to go out there. So anyway, we're going to start down here in this corner here. We're going to build it out square like it's laid out here. But when we get ready to hang it, we're going to put our hangers right here at these joints here. And so the chain will be hanging off up in this area here. So when it goes on point, it just gives you a whole different look about how the project will be. It's going to be here again, real simple, straightforward, and easy cuts. And when we get ready to let it in, we'll come back and we'll build our form, and then we'll get ready to let it in. Okay, we're going to get ready to set our form in here. So we'll have a 90-degree angle down here on the left-hand corner. And the way we're going to do that, we're going to take a square. We're going to set the square right in here. And we're going to take and put a little spacer in here and move it out. We're going to take our first strip that we're going to use for our framing. This is made out of a 3/4 inch pine. I just set the backstop on my table saw and just rip out a 1/4 inch wide strips, so it works very nice for the forming. So we're going to set that in there like that. Going to line it up just right here at the corner here. We're just going to take some small brads, and we're going to just take and we'll tack it down to the table right here. And we want to hold it tight against our square because we want the project to come out square. We don't want it to be all crooked when it comes out. So we'll put that right like that. Then we'll take our second strip here. We're going to lay it in here, and we can slide down our square till it intersects right here. Now we have a perfect 90-degree square here. we're taking our tack this down. Hold it up against the square real tight. We want it straight. If you don't have a table saw, you have no way to make nice little pieces for framing like this. You can buy wood at the hardware store. A lot of it's just molding for around the doors and things like that, or maybe an inch wide or an inch and a half wide. Just pick up some of that and use it for your project, and that'll work out just as well. Okay, so we got our frame cut here, or laid out. So now what we're going to do, we're going to get ready and we'll cut some lead. We're going to put down a U-shaped cane here, here, and here. And from there, we'll go ahead and we'll start to put the project together. So let me get a piece of cane here real quick. So this is our U-cane right here. We talked about this earlier. This is the way it looks. Okay, for the U-cane, has the U shape in it. It makes the letter U. For the corner here now, we're going to start it. We're going to put it right in the corner here. And I'm going to intentionally here cut it about a ½ inch longer than I need. And I'll show you why we'll do that when we get ready to finish the project up. So I'm going to take my shears for my cane. I'm going to cut it right there. On this end here now, I'm going to take it up here and I'm going to cut a 45-degree angle right here. And that's going to go right in here, just like that. We're going to use some push pins. You may have watched other videos where they're using horseshoe nails. This is a push pin. It has aluminum top, 5/8 inch pin in it. We're using a homosoid board, so they push right into it. You just pull it up and push it in tight. We're going to take our shear again, because when the shear's cut, this side here makes them have a point on them. So we're going to cut this straight again. We're going to set this one in here. Here again, I'm going to leave this one here about a ½ inch long. So it says we need to cut it right here. Just turn it around flat side to flat side. That gives us a nice flat cut on our U-cane. Now we're going to just take and we're going to trim this out as a 45. This doesn't have to be perfect. When you get ready to solder it, the solder will make up any imperfections. So there's our corner right there. And now we're going to take and we're going to set another pin here at the end. So that's our edge ready to get started. Now what we're going to do, we're going to take our lighter glass, which is this one here, and we're going to cut some. In this case, we're going to cut 4 1x1 squares in here. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to just put it on our table and we'll just cut these on. When you're cutting glass, by the way, we talked about this earlier. When you're cutting glass, you want to cut it on the smooth side. Both of these sides have a little bit of a ripple. Pick the one that has the least amount, which is this side here. But this will be the upside on it here. So when we get ready to come back, we'll get ready to start and lead this up. Okay, so we're back now. It's time to go ahead and start to put some glass into our project. As we talked about a little earlier when we talked about cutting the glass, the fact that the glass cutter adds some width to each of the cuts, and we're not too concerned about that because we have no limitation either way here on the project. The only thing we want to do is be sure it's square when we're done with it. So we put our lead cane in here on our last video. So that's the U cane. So that's the one that makes the letter U. That's primarily for the outside edge. So we're going to take our first 1-inch square, which is right here. I'm going to make all of these run the same direction. So it sits in here like this, fits right there. I'm going to take a piece of H cane. This is the one. Remember this one here? It looks like a H. We're going to set it in here. And we're just going to take a Sharpie, any kind of pen, pencil. I'm going to mark it. And I'm marking it about a 1/16 of an inch back from the actual size of the glass. And the reason for that is, I'll show you here. When it goes in here, see here it has a little bit of a notch right there. If you don't do that, when you get ready to put this piece of H cane in, when we're going to go this way with it, it will not fit down smooth. You want it to be close, but you don't want it to be sticking up so that you make this one bend. So be sure to always cut these a little bit shorter. You can cut them, try not to cut them too short though, because you don't want to do this situation here. Well, I'll cut this one short on purpose. Put that in there like that, and then when this one goes in here, you end up with a gap in between them. You don't want to do that because then when you get ready to solder, it becomes more difficult. So you want these to match up. So you want to take your H-came, put it in here. Here again, mark it. Just about a 1/16 of an inch, because that will take the place of the heart, which is this piece right here. This heart is really only a 32nd, but this gap right here from the heart out is about a 1/16 of an inch. The cane we're using is the 7/32, and so it's 7/32 across the crown here, and it has a slight roll to it, so it makes a nice looking finished job. So we'll go ahead and we'll cut this. I'm using my lead cutters. And that's going to drop right in here. Now we're going to put the bright pink ones are going to go in here, and so we haven't cut any of those yet. So I'll show you what we're going to do with those. We're going to take one of our pieces right here. This one right here. We'll use this one, and if you look at it, you can see it's a little bit wavy right here. That'll be interesting. We may have to make this U-came and open it up a little bit. Yeah, we're going to have to do that. So that's a good reason when you see one that's wavy like that. They make a little tool to do that with. We talked about that in tools also. And this just happens to be the guy we want right here. This little guy right here. We're going to take and run that through here. And what that'll do is that'll spread that channel out a little bit. Run it through both of them here. So that opens that up a little bit so that this glass now will sit down inside of it. This shows you a good example how wavy this is. See right here, see this gap right here? Because it's moved up against the top here. Now down here, it's moved down below here. So when you have hard glass like that to use, there is a way to get around it, and you use this to just spread the cane open. When you spread the cane open though, sometimes it curves it just a little bit. So just physically take your fingers and kind of straighten it out. Lay it on your table and kind of feel if it's kind of pretty straight. Put it back in here. This one here, you can see quite a bit of crooked to it. All right, we're going to pull it out here straight. Normally, I should have looked at that first. If I had known that that glass was going to be that wavy, I would have already spread those, but this is good for show and tell. We'll do it this way. Slide that back in, push it up against our backstop, take your pin up against it. Okay, so now we'll put our corner piece back in, which is the lighter one. Make sure it goes all the way to the back. Put our piece of H-came in here. And since we know this is the smoother of the two sides, we'll turn it over here. And we're just going to mark this right here, right in the middle of this line right here. Maybe. There we go. And now we're going to take our little mechanical square. I'm going to set it right here. Take our mechanical square. Put it in here, push it up against. Now remember, our cutter is going to add a little bit to it. Remember the edges of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the cutting wheel right in the middle of that mark. So you can see my ruler is actually back. I'll pull it over here. My ruler is actually back a little bit away from that line. So we're just going to go and we're going to make a little straight cut here. I can take that, put my fingers there and just snap it. And that's going to go right here. We'll take and slide that in. These should be flush across the top, these two here. Take and push it down. Take another piece of H-came, we're going to put it in here. We're going to mark it here again, a little bit short. Take our lead cutters again, cut it. And now, since I cut this off of a long piece here, I'd like them to all stay together. So I'm going to use this next little one here. We're going to push it in here, and we're going to take and mark it here. I'm going to take our square again, set it in here. Remember, move it back just a little bit, about that far, because that is about the thickness of the cutter right here. Take and cut it for you. Here again, pop it with your hand, or you can use your running pliers. If you use your running pliers, we'll bring it up here where you can see. Take your running pliers and just stick them in there and just give it a little bit of snap. So remember to turn it over. We want all these to fit the same. And now the last one, we're going to cheat here a little bit. Before we cut the final one, we're going to just leave it. We're going to just leave it a little bit long. We have the option to take it back out when we get this piece, and this piece in here. So we don't want to cut it and then all of a sudden find out we're just a little bit too short, because then because your cutter is building each time that you do this. So we're just going to take this piece right here, pull our pin out here. Okay, so we know it doesn't have to be any longer than that. So we're just going to slide it in here, push it in, hold it down tight. And I have some little U-came here that I've used over the years. And I'm going to just take a little piece of that. That one's too big. I'm going to take a little piece of that, and I'm going to sit it on the edge here, and I'm going to put a pin here. You don't want to put your pins right up against the glass because it'll chip it. So put that in there like that. Now, we're all ready to run our came across the bottom here. So we want to take our pointed edge, which is the cutters make that. Use our cutter and we'll cut it straight again. And we're going to just take and lay this in here like this. Pull it down. Now here again, kind of like we left this a little bit long, we're going to leave this one a little bit long too. We can come back to it. So I'm going to cut it about 1/8 of an inch too long. And I'm only doing that because, as I said, as we stack this glass all in here, these continue to grow. And as they grow, even though, because we're not using a pattern, we're just using a drawing. We don't have any set pieces that we cut out on paper and cut them exact. As it grows, well, we don't want to get down here at the end and find out that now we've cut something too short and we've got to start over. Especially if you bought some expensive glass and you don't want it to, you don't want to waste it. Okay, so this piece goes in here like that. Push it in real tight. Take your pins, set it in here like this. Pull that out here. Make sure you're up. Make sure the lead's up against it. Check your joints here. Make sure you got everybody nice and tight. This is a great time if you got a big gap in one of them. You haven't gotten very far in the project. Take it out and cut you a new piece. It's better to do it now than it is to get almost all the way done and find out you've got a big gap here that you're going to try to have to solder. And when you do that, your solder joint never looks quite as nice as if it's just a real tight fit. So that's the bottom one. Okay, so now we're going to make one that goes up the top. We're going to do the same thing as we just did. So we'll take our next piece of glass right here, and we're going to take and we're going to stick it in here. So we're going to stick it in here right here. Take our marker, mark it right on the middle of our line. These lines were made with a little wider Sharpie pen, so they kind of represent the heart of this lead right here. So it kind of gives you a feeling for, we shouldn't be too far off on this little pattern. Take our square again. Here again, push it back just a little bit. Give it a little score. Take and snap it. Here, if you want to, hold that. If you think it's going to get away from you, just put a piece of U-came on it and pin it just like that. Take another piece of your H-came, this one here, trim it off straight. Slide it in here. We're going to mark this one here again, about 1/16 of shorter than the actual glass. Use your trimmers and cut it off. That one might be a little bit cut too short. Let's see what the joint would look like when this piece is run up here. Yeah, that one's marginal. I'll throw that one away. Like I said, we're just getting started, so don't go. That's good enough. We'll fill it in with solder because it's better to make it just like you want it than it is to try to fix it later on. That's better looking. Okay, we're going to turn this one over. Okay, so we're going to cut this one here. Now, as far as these pieces go on your pattern or whatever you decide to lay out, you can make those anything you want. I just laid these out. Normally what I do is, rather than have to figure out how to make this completely in thirds to be exactly thirds, I usually cut a couple exactly the same and then fill in this middle one with a little bit shorter one. So that works out quite well. Okay, so we're going to mark this one here. The reason I'm holding this away, not going all the way in here, sometimes when you're working with real opaque glass, you won't be able to see this line right here. So in this case, I can see it because it's transparent. But you want to just kind of hold it away. You're just getting a mark for your cutting. Here again, hold it down. I don't know if I can show you this or not. Here's what I'm trying to show you right here. Okay, so I'm holding my square away, and here's, see the cutting wheel? Now the cutting wheel is right on the mark I want. If I put my square right on the mark, see, now that's going to end up that much too short. So hopefully that kind of shows. Otherwise, that's why we're moving this over. If you go like, well, you mark it and then he's cutting it longer. Well, I'm not really cutting it longer. I'm just moving my square down longer. My cutting wheel on my glass cutter is going to take up that little bit of spot right here. Okay, so that one's going to go in there. And we're going to go ahead and cut another piece of H-cane. Slip that in here. Going to measure it. Cut it again. And just like we did down here, we're going to leave this one just sticking out. We'll come back and fix it when we get our next pieces in here. Slide that in. This looks like it might be a little bit too long, this one right here. So, like I say, take and trim it now, just a little bit. Trim it now because it'll save you a lot of grief later on when it doesn't quite line up straight and you wonder why is your job going all crooked. Okay, we're going to just leave this one here. I'm going to take and put a piece on here, and now I'm going to pin it down. Now we're going to run a piece of H-came up here. So we'll get our H-came again. We're going to run it here again, about 1/8 of an inch over our project. So we'll come back and trim that back when we get ready to finish it up. So we're going to stick that on there. We'll get this cut. That's our H-came. Can remove this pin, take this U-came out of here, and put the next one in here. It's got a little bit of a curl on the end of it. Straighten it up a little bit. Okay, pull it down. And this is what you're looking for right here. You want this intersection to be as nice and tight and straight as possible. You don't want a situation where you got one coming down and one over here and you got kind of a kink to it. So this is what you want. You want it to line up nice and tight here. You can take and put your pins in here. Push this over tap that over. If you think this one right here, right there is sticking out a little bit too much, and it's making the cane take a curve to it. So take your cutters in here, just trim it just a very little bit. We can take and stick it back into its spot where it goes here. Put the heart back into the slot here. You take your little tool here, it's got a sharp edge on the back here. Just take and push it right in here. There we go, that's a little better looking. You'll know that it's not in the right place when you go to push up against here, and if it makes the cane go like that, you'll know that you got something that's too long there. Okay. Now we'll just put a pin down here. Okay, when we come back on the next video, now we're going to start to put this piece in here. And I'm going to build out to here, and then we're going to go off camera again, and then we'll finish this up, and then we'll come back in and we'll how to finish the thing up. All right, be back in a minute. Okay, so we put our border on here. So now our next project is to fill in this area here. The most critical part of this is this piece right here. How long do we make this piece? If we cut it off right at our line that we drawn here, and this piece here and this all these little pieces are longer, then it's going to be too short. So the easiest way to do that, and it just takes a couple seconds to do, you just take a piece of scrap piece that represents this piece right here, and just take it and stick it in your H-cane, slide it over, take a little pin here against your U-cane, stick it in here. Now you can see here, we've already gone over our line here, which we're not concerned about because we're not building this to any particular size. So now we're going to take and we're going to put a piece of H-cane right here. Doesn't have to be anything special. We'll just put this one right here. Then we're going to put this piece right here in. Okay, we'll put a piece of H-cane right there. And then we need this piece right here. So we'll put this piece right here. Now we're not concerned about this right here. We're just trying to find out how high this is going to go here. And we're going to put this piece right here. We'll put our 2x2 square with the bevel on it in here. Then we're going to come across the top here with this piece right here. Make sure it gets into the H-cane, otherwise you'll get a false reading there. This piece goes right there. And this piece goes right here. Okay, so this represents right here, represents how tall this piece has to be. So it's going to be from here up to here. So all we have to do now is take a piece of our glue chip here that's already cut to the right size here. We're going to set it in here in our H-cane. We're going to slide up here close. Then we're going to take our pin, and we're going to take and we're going to mark it right here. So that represents how tall that piece has to be. So then we're going to take it over to our little cutting table here, and I'll cut this with a square. And I'm going to be careful, make sure I get it right on the line so they're the right length. So I've got it cut here, just going to snap it. So now all of this stuff here, we can just take and move it out of the way here. This piece here, we'll put it with the glue chip side up. It goes in here right here. So that represents this piece right here. Then we're going to have to cut a piece of cane to go in here. Okay, we're going to cut this, remember, we're going to cut this just a little bit short right there. That's a little bit too long still, just a little bit. I guess I should backtrack just a little bit. After we figured out how high to make this one here, we'll cut the other three, this one, and this one, exactly the same size, and I've already done that. So you can see here, we've got three now that are all the same size. So that's one reason, because it's going to be square. All three of these now will be the same size, along with this fourth one here that we just figured out how tall to make it. So we'll take one of our ones we just cut here. That one's out of the way, we don't need it. This one here goes right here. We're going to take a little bit of our U-came right here. We'll stick it in here just to hold this all together tight for us. Close down. Make sure it's tight. We got our trim. So now we need a piece of H to go here. Here again, we're going to cut it just a little bit short, so we'll have a place for the next piece of H came to go up the top. Sets in there just like that. Okay, we can take and put a pin here. This piece here is going to go down here. Put in our H came. This piece here is going to go in here. When you're putting this together, be sure that you get it in the H slot, because if you don't, you're going to have a problem with it when you get ready to get it to line up. It won't line up properly and the glass won't fit right. Okay, we're going to put our square in. Going to put our piece of H came across the top here. And there we go. We got that right where we want it. Came out the right length. Put that right there. We're going to need a piece of H came to go up here. But before we put that one up there, we're going to cut this one that goes across the top here. So we'll just take a piece of U came, stick it in here, just to keep something to hold it together here. So there's that part of it. Now we're going to take a piece of, that one's not quite long enough. So we'll take our cutters again, we'll cut it to a straight edge. Goes in here, we're going to cut it just a hair short. Right there. Put that in there. Take our next piece. Okay, that's right we want. Now to hold this, we're just going to take this and push it down nice and tight. Use our U-came on the outside edge, put it in here. Now we need a piece of lead that goes up the top here. So we'll get some more H-came here. Gonna just hold it in here. Here again, we're going to cut it just a little bit on the long side so that we can trim it back to where we want it. Okay. There's that right there. And our last piece of glue chip is going to go right in here. We'll take and push that in right where we want it. Going to put a couple clips in here. Okay, so to save some time on the video here, I'm going to come back and fill this in off camera, and then we'll come back in and we'll show you how to finish up the outside edges. I'm back really quick here. I forgot one thing I wanted to show you here before I go ahead and go off camera and build the rest of this here. Remember, we left these two here sticking longer than we needed because we didn't know exactly where we wanted to cut them. So now that we've got these pieces and these pieces back in, we know exactly where to cut them now. So all you do is just take your pen and mark these right where this edge is, right where this edge is, and we'll cut these off now. And you can just take and slide them out of your project to cut them. So just take and push them over. Take your hook and just slide them out, cut them, and then slide them back in. So now we'll come back to the next video and I'll fill these in. Okay, we're back now. You can see we got this all filled in. This is where we kind of went off camera and filled that in. So now what we need to do, we need to finish up the outside here with our U-came. So I cut a couple pieces of U-came here. I'm going to show you how we're going to do that. And this gets a little bit tricky here, so kind of keep an eye on it. Hopefully I can show you what we're going to do here. First of all, if you remember in the beginning, we had to spread these a little bit because our outside glass is a little wavy. So we'll get our tool here. This is this one here again. And we'll stick it in here, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to straighten this or spread this out just a little bit. Remember, I told you if we run that through there, it kind of makes them curly. So we'll want to straighten them back out. So take a look at them here. And the tricky part of this is we're going to put some hangers on here. And this is something that I kind of dreamed up. And I've had good luck with it. So I'm going to show you or share this with you and show you how to do this. A lot of videos you'll see they'll just take on the outside of their cane and just take and solder. We're going to put hangers on here and over right here. They'll just take and solder a little ring on there and hope that it stays soldered on. So I've come up with a way that is pretty much bulletproof, and we won't have any problems with it, especially if these are outside and they're in the high winds and so forth. They won't be coming apart. Okay, so we got those straightened up a little bit. So we're going to pull these pins out of here. Those are just in there to kind of hold everything together for us. So we're going to take this one right here and we're going to set it in here. And we're going to let it extend beyond here. I'll show you what we're going to do that when we get done with it here. And I'm just going to take a couple of pins here and stick them in here real quick. And then this one here, pull this apart. Now we need to run another piece of U-came down here. So I've already cut that one to fit in here. Tap it in, make sure you got all your pieces in here. This one right here has got kind of a pretty big gap right here. I don't know if I like that or not. So we're not that far along into this. So let's slide this one out here, and we'll cut us another new piece to go in here that's just a little bit longer. So we'll just take, and that one there we can do really easy. We'll just take our two pieces together here and extend it out just a little bit longer. It's not that that one wouldn't work, but we're not that far into it, so we can go ahead and cut another one here. That'll be just a little bit closer. We won't have quite as much overhang on it. There, that looks a little better. And it's easier to do this now than it is to say, well, I should have probably done that a little while ago. So we're going to put that in there. Kind of got a little, this piece of glass right here, I don't know if you can see this or not, it's got a little bit of a high spot right here. If you have a grinder, you can just take and run that along the grinding edge. If you don't have a grinder, get a piece of like 80 grit sandpaper, set it on the edge and just run it down, and that's what I'm going to do real quick. So I just ran that down, I knocked that edge off. What happens sometimes when you cut the glass, you get a little bit of an area right across the outside edge there where when you go ahead and snap it, it leaves a funny little razor sharp edge, so you don't want to run your finger across it. So we'll put this back in here. And you'll feel that when you try to put your cane up against it, you'll feel that something's holding it away. So there we go. So we got that in there. Now, this is where it gets a little bit tricky. We're going to put our hangers right here where these joints are right here. And we want to be sure that what we do is that we get it right on those areas there, because that'll help give it strength. So we're going to take and we're going to mark it with our pen right here. Right there. And we're going to mark it right here. Then we're going to take this piece of lead out. And we're going to turn it over and we're going to mark it right here on the edge. Now, I know this may be a little bit hard for people, but if you try this, you'll have good success with it. Okay, now what we're going to do, we're going to take a little block of wood. We're going to take our electric hand drill. It's got a 3/32 drill in it, and we're going to put a hole right here. Just like that. And then we're going to take a 3/32 cotter pin. It's a zinc coated cotter pin. And that cotter pin is going to go right through this hole, right like that. Okay. Then we're going to come over and we have a small drill vise here. And we're going to set this in here and we're going to pull that cotter pin up tight. And we're going to tighten our vise up against that. Then I have a small piece of tubing here. It has about a 3/32 hole across the end of it. You're going to take and you're going to put this in between the splits on it all the way down and pull these legs down flat. Now these legs are going to be hidden underneath the cane, so you'll never see them. Then I'm going to take a large screwdriver here, and it's going to take and going to tap those down flat. Just like that. Put it in here, put it on there. Like to have it nice and flat. Here again. Now I'm going to take my solder and a little bit of flux here. I'm going to put right on the joint right there where it goes in. So I'm going to take my soldering iron. And I'm just going to take this. Hopefully this is good where you can see this. I'm going to take this. I'm going to put a little bit of solder right here in the joint here. And where it goes through the cane, I'm just going to solder it real tight, just like that. Now you could go out here and solder these ends if you wanted to. I don't think it's necessary. because in order for that to be pulled out of there, it's going to have to pull all those legs straight through that hole there. So that's not going to happen. After you get it soldered, you take it out, and there's your hanger right here. Okay, so now there's one other little issue that's happened here. Since we've run this cotter pin down inside this came here, that's pushed this came away from the edge of our glass here. If you don't have a grinder, what I'm going to do, since I have a grinder, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to grind a very little bit of this glass out here like this. I'm going to grind it out here like this. Not real deep, just a little bit. Okay, if you don't have a grinder, take something about the same thickness as this and just take some white glue and stick it on here and just glue it in about 3 places along here. And that'll space it out straight. If you don't do that, then your cane is gonna be bent, and it's not gonna look good for you. And what really works good, if you want to, if you're looking for something to space it out with, take an old piece of H-cane like this, take it up here and cut the heart out of it. And this little piece that's in here, this heart, this little piece right here, that is just about the perfect thickness to help space that out. So you can just take and trim it. And it's a piece of material that you've already got with you. You can take and trim it. Take this and just stick it in here like this. And you're all set. That'll help space it out. You can just stick it in by itself. I usually put a little bit of, if I'm going to do that, I usually put a little bit of white glue, and that'll take and hold it in there. So when we put it in there, but real quick here, we're going to go offline and we're going to grind these back real quick, and then we'll come back and we'll do the top side. Okay, we're back here. So now I've ground out just enough there for our cotter pin to go in here. So now we're going to take our piece that we just put together and soldered. It's going to slip right in here like this. Going to go up here like that. We'll take and put some pins on the edge, push it in tight. Okay, so that's our hanger there. This one here, let's go ahead and do that one next. I'll try to move this vise over a little bit closer underneath the camera there so you guys get a little better picture of how this is going. I checked that video just a minute ago, and it's a little bit off to the side there. So we're going to take this one out. Here again, we're going to mark out on the face of it where we're going to drill our hole. Going to set it in here. We're going to drill our hole right in the center if you can get it there. I'm going to move this over really, really close here. Hopefully we can get this in here. I guess this is about as good as we can get. Okay, we're going to put our cotter pin in. Okay, we got our hole drill. We're going to put our cotter pin in. And do a very good job getting that one right in the middle, kind of off to the side there just a little bit. Okay, we're going to pull our cotter pin up. We're going to take our drill vise here, and we're going to tighten it up on it. I'm going to give that a pretty good tight, because when we bend this down, we're going to tap on it, and otherwise you'll just push it right straight through. Take our tubing, here again, go down each side of it, all the way down to the bottom, and just pull it down tight. Pull it down tight. Now, I'm just using a screwdriver for this. You could use anything you want. It's something to just push this down. But you want to be sure to you stay on the cotter pin. If you jump off the cotter pin, you'll damage the cane, and that's not what you want to do. So just take and tap it down. I'm just using my Grozer pliers like a hammer. Down. Push it down. There you go. Okay, we're going to put a little flux in here. And When you're soldering in here too, be a little bit careful because you don't want to get on the edges of this because it'll melt this really easy out there on the edges. So we just want to solder this right where it goes through the hole here. So just put a little solder in here. Let it flow. Okay, and get away from it. So there we go. So I'm going to turn it over. Now we got a nice hook there that won't be coming out of our project. We'll just wipe it off a little bit. Move our vise out of the way, and then we'll put this piece back in here. But here again, I'm going to take off camera here. I'm going to take and I'm going to grind this out just a little bit to handle those legs. And like we said before, if you don't have a grinder, just put a couple shims in here, 2 or 3 in here to space that to match it up. We'll be right back. Okay, we're back here. You can see right here, I've ground those back a little bit. And so that's where these legs here will fall in place there. So we'll just plate this back in place. Push it up tight. Take and put a couple pins in here real quick. And there we go. We got our 2 hangers here. So we're going to hang a chain out here on an angle, and we'll put a split ring on the end of it so we can hang it onto a hook or a shepherd's hook or somewhere. Okay, so now that we got this all done, the next step was going to be we're going to solder it all up. Okay, and so we'll go over that real quick. A couple things you want to look at. Look at your joints right here. Kind of like to make these exactly perfect if you can. And if it's off a little bit, you can take a little block of wood and you can push them over to line them up. It just makes a little bit nicer looking job. So check all 4 corners. Looks like we look pretty good there. These all look good in here. Make sure it's all laying nice and flat, which it is. So we'll get ready to solder this. So I'll come back on the next video clip and we'll get this soldered up. All right, we're going to solder this up now. So we're going to take a look at all of our joints. We like them. They all look nice and tight. We don't have any with big gaps. So I think we'll be in good shape there. First thing we're going to do, we're going to take our stainless steel brush here and we're going to brush over all the joints. And what that does is that knocks off any oxidation that may be on the lead. You can see how it's shiny or where I've run the brush around it. That'll just help your solder flow smoother. Sometimes you can just go ahead and solder this up without doing this. I found that this gives you the best results. So if you find something that works for you, I want you to stay with it and enjoy some easy soldering. If it has oxidation on it, what will happen is the solder won't flow good. It kind of gobs up and it doesn't look very good at all on your job. So kind of just go over each one. Okay, that looks good. Make sure everything's lined up where you want it. Okay, then we're going to take our flux and we're just going to go and we're going to flux all the joints. Very critical. Make sure you have flux on it because if you don't have flux on it, the solder will just kind of stick on the top there. It won't really solder. It won't flow. So we'll want to be sure that we've got flux on all of our joints. Okay. Now, structurally, one of the reasons I wanted to have our hanger by one of these joints here, it gives you more structure that if you didn't have it by a joint there, over time, this cane would be pulled away from the glass. So by having it hooked to something else, it makes it stronger. So that gives you a little bit more strength in your hanger. So now we're going to use a 60-40 solder. You can use it right on the roll. The roll weighs a pound when you first get it. And so I found if you're doing a big job, this isn't a big job, but when you're doing a big job, that gets kind of heavy. So I usually just take it 8 to 12 inches of solder and just cut it off here. Then I take my soldering tip. I have a sponge on my soldering holder. I like to take and wipe the tip off real good. It should look nice and shiny like this. Gonna just take and put just a little dab of solder right here. And I'm gonna come right here on this joint, and I'm gonna put my solder down real flat and just put it down and touch it and move away. You don't need to linger on it too long, and you don't want to move your solder iron around. Just let it go on there and just let it come down and just let it go straight down. Okay, solder is one of these things where practice that one there, didn't get it all enough solder there on it. Let it flow out. But the more you practice, the more you'll get down to where you're happy with what you're making. I try to make all my beads the same if I can, and that's regulated by how much solder that I put in here. I'm just taking off the last little tip of solder on my solder here. Sometimes one side of the iron's better than the other. This side's the better side here. So sometimes you have to turn the iron over. And here again, like I say, practice. If you're really concerned, you're just your first job, you're concerned about how to get it to solder, take a bunch of junk cane, stick it together on your work table, and just practice on it before you get ready to go to your live job. Okay, we just keep moving along here. We go. I don't really have any rhyme or reason why we solder some parts first. Some people like to start in a corner, or some people like to start on the perimeter, solder all the outside edges to start with, and then move in. But I just kind of get started and then move it around. One thing I do like to do about moving around, I don't like it to get too hot, the glass. Okay, that got down to be pretty short there, but since solder is expensive, just take your soldering iron and hook it here and just take and hook it back in here and save that little piece here. And then we come back in here and we just continue to solder with it. Now these here, I've got this pin right there where the joint is, so I'm going to move it over. These on the outside edge are a little bit hard for me to see because I'm trying to stay out of the picture here. And so I'm kind of leaning over here. There we go. Okay, let's take a look and see. Here's one right here we missed. If you miss one, you can always go back and do it later, but I kind of like to check it. So we'll just check all of them here. Looks like we've got them all down. Every once in a while, you'll get a little bubble like this one here. Sometimes they'll push off. If they don't push off, just take your cutters and go right up against the cane and just pull them off, and they'll pull it off nice and tight. All right, so this is done on the front side of our project. So take all your stick pins out now. Got our hangers here, so we look good there. So I usually just have a little rag or cloth around, and I kind of wipe off the pieces, just kind of get that cleaned up a little bit. Okay, now we're going to turn this over, and since this is it's going to be a sun catcher, both sides are going to be visible. So when you solder this second side here, do just as good a job as you did on the first side. Don't just kind of do it halfway and then say, ah, that's good enough. Here again, we're going to brush them down. The other thing about soldering on the back side here, it's great practice. If you have a little trouble, you can, it doesn't show quite as bad. And like I say, practice makes perfect, so just keep working on it. If you get frustrated a little bit, don't worry about it. Just keep working on it. Sometimes if you have problems with a solder joint, going back over it and going back over it and going back over it is probably the worst thing you can do. Kind of just let it cool down and then revisit it a little later. Okay, putting our flux on. Okay, so we'll get it all fluxed up here. Okay, while I solder up this second half here, I'm going to go off camera. You're getting the idea, so you don't need to watch me do the second side. Then when we come back, we're going to figure out what we're going to do with these ends here, and I'll show you what we're going to do with those. All right, so we've got it completely soldered up now. So here's our piece. But we've got these corners right here, and so what are we going to do with those? We could just cut them off and leave that open, but what we're going to do, we're going to take this, and about 1/4 inch up from the bottom, we're going to cut it like that. And then I'm going to go in here with my cutters. I'm going to cut it right here. I'm going to cut it right here. I'm going to cut this into a point. And then on the edge of my workbench, I'm going to push that down, and it closes up that area. That way, we're going to go ahead and solder those. And then we're going to put them on a piece of 80 grit sandpaper, and we're going to polish them down to where they're completely flat, so you won't see them. And then we're going to put just a little chamfer on the edges, or just a little smooth edge, so there won't be any sharp edges in case somebody were to hit their head or something on it. So we got a little point here, if you see it right here. We're going to put it on the edge of our table. Push it back in so that fills that up. And we're going to do the same with this one here. Just trim it down. What this does is this just helps fill up that gap. You could probably fill it up with solder, but it's going to take a little bit of work to get it to flow in there. By putting the lead down inside, you don't need near as much solder. So that's what it looks like, fold it over. And what we'll do now is we're going to take and put all these little chips out of the way. We're going to take our drill vise again, and we're going to use that like a third hand. When you do this, now don't get too strong on it, because you don't want to bust the glass, which we just went to all the trouble to put in there. So you don't want to do that. Okay, so we're going to take, right here, we're going to take a little bit of flux. Take our soldering iron. We're just going to hold it right here. And we're just going to solder that shut, just like that. You don't need a whole lot. Okay. Now we're going to move to the next corner. Here it is. Okay. We're going to use our flux on it again. This is the corner that we started at. This is the one that's on the 45. So it just has a little tiny gap right here. So we're just going to put just a little bit of solder right here on the top. Just to fill it up. This gives your job a nice finished look to it, where if you leave these open or you just cut them off flat, It's the difference between doing a nice job, a quality job, or just an okay job. So let's always try to strive to do the best job we can. So we'll put flux on both ends of this. So we're going to solder right on the end like that. I'm going to take and turn it around. Here again on our vise, don't go too tight, just real light. Just a little bit of solder on it. There you go. If you don't have a drill vise, if you got a couple bricks that you use in the yard, just put a couple bricks on. If you see something like this happen, where this when we flip this on here, it kind of flowed over there, just lay it back on your table and just take your iron and just touch it. It'll flow out just like that, and then you'll be all right with it. Okay, I'm going to go off camera. I'm going to smooth these edges down, and then when we come back, we'll wash it all up and we'll put a chain on it, and we'll be done with the project. So I'll be right back. Okay, so we've got it all washed up. We cleaned it up real good. To wash this up with, I just use a regular dishwasher soap with just 2 or 3 drops in a bucket of water and just scrub it down real good. Then I usually spray it with isopropyl alcohol and really shine it up really good. So we're going to hang our chain now. Our chain's going to be made up of a split ring. And this chain, you can buy this at a hardware store. It's called Jack Chain, and this one here is 16 gauge, which I found works just about perfect for our projects. It's kind of an open loop chain, so to put it on your project, just take a pair of pliers and you open up the loop right here, and we're just going to take it. We're going to take this on our hanger and we'll drop the loop in here. We're going to take our long nose pliers right here, and we're going to gently close it shut so it can't come loose. This side here, we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to take it, get it up here where you can see it. I'm going to insert this into our hanger. Hold it here. Take our long nose pliers and just close it up gently. You don't want to crush it back here. And that's all there is to it. So there's our project all done with our hanger on it. So we'll do a little closing video here. We're going to take it outside and we'll hang it in the patio and put a little sun through it, and we'll see if we can catch some sun. Move it over here so you can see it here. All right, we'll be back when we get outside. Okay, we got the project all done. We hung it out on the patio so everybody can enjoy it, and I hope you guys try it and have it for your patio. Thank you.